My name is Rex Vessels. I'm Intergen's CRM practice lead down in Wellington, and I'm going to be running you through a showcase for Beef and Lamb's digital clipboard. I've got a quick agenda, a couple of slides on the background, the solution, the results that we're seeing out of the product, and then I'll take you through a cool demo. So a bit of background about Beef and Lamb. They're a farmer-owned industry organization, and basically they collect membership fees and levies, and they use that money to develop programs into better farming techniques, which they then present back to the farming industry. They run these programs nationally to thousands of attendees, and as you can see in the graph there, anything from 600 to 2,000 attendees go through their events on a monthly basis. So that's quite a big number of people going through. They've got 200 plus events per year, and in the graph you can see attendee sizes vary from about 20 up to 90 people in their events. So that's quite a lot of people going through the events that they need to capture information about. Now, they also have minimal pre-registration, so they don't actually know who's going to turn up to the events until the events run and people just walk in. Now, previously they used a paper-based attendance system where they would stake a clipboard and send it around an audience and ask people to please write down their names and contact information on the piece of paper. It's quite a daunting task to then try and collate all of that information, capture it into the system. You get all kinds of problems. You've got to check for duplicates before entering each and every person. You've got to try and decipher people's handwriting. You can imagine the kind of problems that they face trying to get that information back into the system. So they really wanted a better way of doing that. So they approached Intergen, and we had a workshop with them to basically go over these requirements as well as a couple of additional requirements. For instance, they do have an Apple infrastructure. They make use of iPhones and iPads within their organization, so they've got security and network settings and everything configured for that, so they wanted to use an iPad for digital clipboard. The iPad also needed to work in a disconnected mode out in the field where they run their events, so we had to make sure and go over all the security and privacy considerations for having people's information on an iPad out there in the open. End user experience was quite important to them as well. The attendees to the events are obviously well respected within their field of farming, but they may not be as IT savvy as people like us working on computers every single day. And we also used a feature called guided access mode. Anybody know what guided access mode is? It's actually quite a nifty feature built into the iPad itself, and it allows you to lock down the device completely. It disables all the hardware buttons, disables all the multitasking gestures and everything like that, and locks it to the application running to make sure that we can actually give this iPad to attendees and not have somebody accidentally click the wrong button and go out of the application. So that was very useful for the success of this project as well. And Beef and Lamb uses CRM 2011, but they may also obviously upgrade in the future, so the application had to be able to cope with that. In the graph there, I've just got a sample of, in the short time that we have been running the digital clipboard, you can see how it's been used up to 22 times in a single week at some of the events. And the graph also nicely shows that we went through a proof of concept stage, running it in the field, and then out of that made some enhancements and more features into the app, and then starting to roll it out again. So when we came up with the solution, we decided to go for an HTML-based solution, a web-based solution, which is great for a number of reasons. First of all, it integrates very easily into CRM. In fact, the application is run as a solution within CRM, so it's actually hosted in CRM, which is great. The web technology allows us to use multiple devices in a single event, because the web's all about having multiple people connected to a single server. So in the graph, you can actually see a a third of the events so far, they've actually gone with 2 or even 3 iPads at some of the bigger events successfully. Also, deployment is very easy when you use web technology. We simply have to update the solution within CRM, and when the iPads connect to the network, they automatically get the latest version of the app. So we didn't have to go through any app stores, anything like that. Another part of the solution, quite important, was getting the information back into CRM. We had to concentrate on making sure that we don't create any unnecessary duplicates. And based on that, Beef and Lamb also requested that they could have somebody see the process and manually intervene with the process as it's being synced up back to CRM to make sure that the data is as clean as possible when it goes into their system. They also wanted somebody in head office to be able to do the synchronization. So the trainer out in the field would use the iPad and then be able to just push up the data into a queue, and somebody in head office can see there's a new event ready to be processed. They can pick it up in CRM and run it through the sync process, which is great. Benefits realized. First of all, there's been an amazing turnaround in the speed that we are able to get the information back into the system. You can imagine with the paper-based system, it would take days, if not weeks, to get everybody's information captured into the system. Whereas currently, in the short time that we've run the digital clipboard, 2/3 of the events have actually been able to be processed back into the system in less than a day. Some events do run over the weekends and only processed on the next business day, so we don't expect that to be 100%, but it's a pretty good result. The application is also viewed very positively by the key stakeholders. They really like it. They've given a lot of positive feedback about it. And even the attendees out in the field are very happy about it, happy about not having to capture the same information for every single event. Once they're in the system, they can simply find themselves and mark themselves as being as attending the event. And based on that, we're also starting to see that we're getting more attendance records being captured, which basically means that previously people would just take the paper-based clipboard and just pass it on without putting down the information. And currently, the number of people actually capturing the information on the iPad is increasing, which is great for Beef and Lamb, which is a result that they were after from the beginning as well. The iPads can also be used for extended functionality. So since it's out there, people are just coming up with wonderful ideas that they can use the iPad for. For instance, they can put demos and videos and showcases and things on there that attendees can look at before or after the events. And they're also talking about potentially doing checks for the presenters, health and safety checks to make sure the events run smoothly when it does run. Cool. I'm going to switch over and show you a demo of the application. Okay, there we go. Cool. So this is, I've got an iPad over here, basically looks like that. And we've got the application running in portrait mode for the best resolution. So first thing, when I open up the application, while I'm still connected to the office network or the internet, I can go and synchronize all the events and contacts down to the iPad. This will ask me to log into CRM. Once I'm signed in, I can select how far into the future I want to synchronize the events. So they've got quite a few events, and a presenter might go out into the field and present a couple of events for a couple of days before they get back to a connected network. So this allows them to capture all of those events offline on the iPad, capture all the attendees for those events before they get to a network, and synchronize the whole lot back. They can also filter it by their region. So if they always run events in certain regions, then it makes sense to just limit that amount of events on the iPad to find them easily. And then click on sync events. That happens quite fast because we don't have a lot of events. So that's great. And then we can also synchronize the contacts. That takes slightly longer because we basically grab all the key information of the contacts out of the database for the entire database and sync it down to an offline store onto the iPad. Once we've got all the information, I can now see a list of events at the bottom that I can capture attendees for. So I'm going to look at the IT and the industry event and add attendees to that. I'm presented with a screen where I can fill in some basic information about the event. So we can do a manual head count, and this is used to compare with the amount of attendance records that we get to see how many people are actually capturing the information, which is great. So I can update this to say it's 50 people in the event. I can also note down any comments about the event. And these comments and counts will also be synchronized back to CRM. Can then go and save and capture attendees. The application will give me a reminder to switch to guided access mode. So I'll show you how I do that. You simply triple click the home button after it's been enabled, and that would start guided access mode. The iPad is now locked down, so if I push the power button, I just get a message at the top there, which you might not be able to read, that says guided access mode is disabled, so that button's disabled. So I cannot click the home button, the volume buttons, everything else doesn't work, multitasking doesn't work. So I'm basically locked into this app. I can now take the iPad and pass it around to the audience members and ask them to capture the information. I'm going to run through a couple of typical scenarios. So first of all, let's try John Doe. He's not in the system. So as I type, you'll see results come up, but I can't find myself in the list. So I'm going to click on the Not in the List button. That will then give me a form to fill in my details. And I can save and confirm that. I'll say thank you and pass the iPad on to the next person and return to the search screen, ready for the next person to capture their details. So let's go with Jane this time. So Jane is in the system. But I noticed that the mobile number is incorrect, so I'm just going to add the last digit to that number, just making an update to my existing information. Save and confirm that. And there we go. So we can pass it on to the next person, which would be Simon Austin. And he's pretty happy with his information. Everything's correct, so he can just save and confirm and carry on. And then last but not least, I'm going to try and force a duplicate for myself. So I'm going to search for myself. I can see I'm in the list, but I'm going to say I'm not in the list and actually capture my details again. There we go. Once the attendees have finished capturing all the information and the iPad's returned to the presenter, he can then disable guided access mode by entering a PIN. And basically go out of the application, reopen it, which will take him back to the home screen. And from here, he can also, once again, update the information for the event if he needs to, or alternatively, once he's back on a connected network back at office, he can then go and send the updated records to CRM. Ask him to log in again. There we go. So over here, we get a list of all the events that we've run. I've only done the one so far, but if you do have a big list, there's a sync all button to send all of them up at the same time. So I'm just going to sync up this event, push it into CRM, and that's basically my task from a presenter's point of view completed. Just wait for that to finish. There we go. Okay, now, let's see if we can switch over. If I now go into CRM on this side, if I go to the marketing section, we've created the event processing batch area within CRM that captures the information for all of these events. So I can see I've got a new batch that requires processing. I'm going to open that up. And I'm just going to have a quick look at the actual event or the campaign. So over here is the campaign record. And I can also see the campaign responses. At the moment, we've only got A. Fleming marked as being registered, so they actually pre-registered for the event. We'll see what happens to them afterwards. So on this record, I am presented with this user interface that basically shows us everything that happened on the iPad for all the attendances. It's broken up into 3 sections. First of all, I've got any new attendees, I've got updates to existing attendees, and then I've just got the actual attendance records at the bottom. So for the new attendees, I can see John Doe is a new person, and there's nobody similar in the system, so that's fine. He's going to be created as a new person. But then there's myself. I've captured myself as a new record, but there is an existing person with very similar details in the system. So instead of creating a new person, I can actually select to update the existing record as opposed to creating unnecessary duplicates. For the updates, I can see Jane has updated her details. I can see what her details is in the system at the moment, and I can also see what change she's made. So I can easily determine whether it was just maybe a slip of the finger on the keyboard, or whether it is a valid update that I do want to push through to the system and make the selection based on that. Once I then click the sync button, it will now process all of this information back into CRM. So it will go and update the contacts where necessary, it will create new contacts where necessary, and it will also go and create all the campaign responses for me on that campaign event. It also then deactivates this record, which basically means we can't sync it anymore, but we can still see a history of what's happened when this record was synced. If I go back to my campaign record and I look at the responses, the A. Fleming response that was registered in the system, he didn't capture his details, so we've actually marked him as registered but did not attend. And then we've got all the other 4 attendance records that I did capture for Jane, John, myself, and Simon, and they're all marked as attended. I can also go and look at Jane's details, for instance, and make sure that the telephone number was in fact updated with the 9 attend. And that's basically it. Are there any questions? Yes? Okay, so the question was for the duplicate identification, how are the rules set up or whether that's configurable. So we've basically looked at names that are similar. or starts with the same characters, and we've looked at email addresses and telephone numbers. So on the name, it's the full name, both first and last. But so far, that's working fine. The only information we actually capture on the iPad is the name, the telephone number, and email address. So those were the only fields that we really needed to deduplicate on, which made it easy, fortunately. Any other questions? So the question is, does it use the CRM duplicate detection rules? And no, because it was a custom app that is running on the iPad, and it's a custom web interface, we had to use our own duplicate detection to make it easy to display on the screen. Cool. Do you mean this screen? So the question was basically, did we write a plugin to do all of these things? The whole application is actually just HTML and JavaScript. It's all web-based. It runs as a CRM solution in the web resources, and it uses the CRM's REST endpoint to communicate to CRM to upload and download the information.